Matthew chapter 15 verse 29 through to chapter 16 verse 4. So in today's reading we get a repeat miracle of Jesus. Jesus feeds the 4,000. And there's so much of this miracle that is identical or similar to the earlier miracle of the feeding of the 5,000 that I think it raises the question, why? Why do it again? Why do it twice? And my answer to that, although I can't prove this to you, but my belief is that just like with the 2 times where the disciples were out on a boat in the storm, another repeat miracle, this was an invitation for the disciples to step up, to take initiative, and for them to do the very same things that they had seen Jesus do earlier. This was a leadership development opportunity for those disciples. I mean, if you think about it, the crowds had been gathered on the mountainside to be healed, just like with the feeding of the 5,000. But this time it states that 3 days had passed, whereas with the feeding of the 5,000, it says it only got to evening. So maybe Jesus was leaving some space. Maybe Jesus wasn't over-functioning, as we often do as leaders, but creating space for the disciples to step into. Of course, they didn't step into that space. They didn't take the initiative. And so in a sense, it's an argument from silence. They had to be asked. And maybe that's because Jesus had compassion. And at this stage, those disciples didn't quite have that compassion that would drive them into action. That's a work of the Spirit in our lives. I hope that we are not waiting for Jesus to tell us to do something. I hope we're not waiting for a green light from Jesus to step out and take a risk and meet a need, because I think for us, like with those disciples, we have already had something modelled to us. We have already been commissioned. We are already sent ones. We've already been called. It's simply about allowing the love of God, the compassion of God to stir us into action. I mean, after all, the need is all around us. I just want to share a little prophetic thought from this passage today, particularly aimed at anyone in leadership. So much of this miracle is the same as the last miracle. The only real big difference is that this time the headline numbers are lower. Last time they fed 5,000, this time 4,000. And I've been thinking a lot recently about church leadership and the challenge of leading in what can feel like for many of us a diminished context. It seems like the things that we are leading are reduced and smaller compared to pre-COVID, pre-lockdown numbers. And I think that's a challenging context for anyone to lead in, to lead out of that. We place so much weight on success criteria, things like growth. We feel that everything has to be bigger and better than yesterday. And it just struck me when I was reading this today, allowing the Spirit to speak to me. Let's not miss the miracle. In the comparison, let's not miss the miracle. Well, this time we only fed 4,000 with 7 fish. That's a 20% reduction in headline figures. No, enjoy and celebrate the miracle of what we have. The miracle of what God is doing. Focus on those who have been fed, who are with you on the mountainside. It's just a little thought for those of you who are church leaders who I know join in these daily devotions. Finally, the Pharisees, once again, they go to Jesus straight after this because they want a miraculous sign from heaven. Why on earth weren't they on the mountainside taking part in this miracle? I don't know. Probably their pride, they knew it all. I just think it shows how closed their minds were, how hard their hearts were. But Jesus takes one of their little sayings of the day, red sky at night, shepherd's delight, red sky at morning, shepherd's warning, that sort of thing. And here's the challenge, I think, for us today from that. I think some of us, we can spend so much time and attention on what is happening here and now in the natural world, what tomorrow might look like, our planning for this term next week, that we can miss what God is doing and wanting to do in the supernatural here and now. And so I just encourage us today to come back to those two discipleship questions, especially in community, to ask ourselves and one another, what is God saying? And what are we going to do in obedience to what he is saying? What does it mean to hear and obey? What does it mean to encounter and surrender? To not merely know what the weather's going to be like tonight or tomorrow, if indeed we can predict that, but actually to know what God is doing and get involved in that this day. And I pray you'll have a great day doing that.